The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So I realized basically Bill O'Reilly has gotten away with his lies. There don't seem to be any repercussions, at least publicly, for Bill O'Reilly getting caught in 5 different lies in the last couple of months. You'll remember Brian Williams is on a 6-month leave for one lie he told, 1.5 lies, I don't know, probably maybe 2, if you think about Katrina and the Iraq helicopter story. Bill O'Reilly had 5 lies. Bill O'Reilly kept saying that he was outside the house of George de Morinchild when he shot himself. That was not true. In Ireland, Bill O'Reilly said that he saw action in Northern Ireland. He actually saw photographs of violence, so that one wasn't true. Bill O'Reilly talked about how he was at the Rodney King riots and how people were throwing bricks and stones at them. We actually found out that that did not happen. Bill O'Reilly's colleagues said it didn't happen. Everybody said that didn't happen. In Argentina, Bill O'Reilly said that he was covering the Falklands Island dispute in 1982 and that he saved his cameraman from getting shot at. Turns out he was actually never at the Falklands. He was in Argentina. And that if anything, he got his cameraman in harm's way by forcing him to shoot with his light on, which CBS had told them not to do. And then he said he was in El Salvador for the murder of nuns. It turns out he didn't show up there until after the murder of nuns had taken place. Will there simply be no repercussions for this, Lewis? I mean, this is a long pattern of lies over decades.
I don't think there will be. I think he means too much to Fox. And I think it's in Fox's best interest to just kind of push this stuff to the side and keep Bill O'Reilly around. Now, you know, the Brian Williams situation, I'm not sure. I guess that's different because Williams was different to his organization than what O'Reilly is to Fox.
Let's talk about that, though. So the difference, of course, on paper is Brian Williams is a news reader, right? He's a reporter. Right. He reads news. Bill O'Reilly does an opinion show, although he always talks about how they're fair and balanced. But I guess at least we recognize that it's an opinion show.
Well, it's an opinion show masquerading kind of as a news show.
So wouldn't then it be even more important, if you want to be considered a news show, that you not allow your host to get away with just making stuff up?
I think so. Also, it was a slightly different situation. I think people take stuff about the two wars that were just happening a lot more seriously than stuff that might have happened 20, 30 years ago.
In conflicts that many of them maybe have never even heard of.
Exactly. So I think those are the big differences.
Is there a difference, though, if you do opinion journalism? Is there a different expectation about what you can and can't say and its connection to reality than if you're a news reader like Brian Williams? Let me give an example. Howard Stern does not even a news show, right? I mean, they talk about news, but over the years, Howard Stern has gone on these monologues, which sound serious, about his time in Vietnam. Howard Stern did not serve in Vietnam. Everybody knows that it's satire, right? So I think that there is a different expectation if it's a satirical show or if it's a serious show. But I don't know that if it's an opinion show versus a reporting show, that there's such a different expectation as with regard to truth. This is an opinion show, right? But if I lied about things, I would assume that if those lies are uncovered, it would be taken seriously, just as seriously in terms of my credibility as when Brian Williams or Bill O'Reilly lie. I don't know that because it's opinion, it should be looked at differently.
I think generally there's less accountability when it comes to when you have an opinion show, but it certainly doesn't make lying any better.
A man reportedly drowned himself after seeing his, what he described as an ugly wife for the first time. This is groom Kang Hu, who was apparently so disappointed after seeing his bride for his arranged marriage for the first time that he tried to drown himself. He said, "I feel bad about what happened, but when I saw her, she wasn't what I had expected, and I realized she would be bad for my image." This is after he was rescued from a river where he tried to drown himself. The 33-year-old groom stunned the wedding guests when he apologized to the bride, Na Sung, 30, after saying she was too ugly before the wedding in Xi'an in central China's Hubei province. He, of course, had not been able to see what she looked like because, as I mentioned, it was an arranged marriage, which he was forced into. Hours after the canceled ceremony, he was lying face down in a river, unconscious but not dead. He did not successfully kill himself by drowning himself. What an insane story, Lewis.
I guess image is everything.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think this highlights some interesting cultural differences.
Some reports have said that the ugly bride thing was really more of an aside, that the man really was mostly upset because of the arranged nature of the marriage, but that in addition to that, once he saw the woman, he was like, whoa, this is not exactly my thing here. I think that what we can say with absolute certainty is that arranged marriages are not a good thing.
They can work, but
they can work, of course, but they're not a good thing.
They can work, right. I mean, just the social pressure in these situations and arranged marriages, I don't think it's healthy.
Are there any circumstances where if you had a kid accidentally or on purpose, you love the kid, right? Perfect, you got the love down. Would there be any situation where you believe that you would say, given the circumstances, I think it would be better if I choose my kid's spouse than allowing it to happen kind of in the more traditional Western way?
I think I'd be better at deciding, I know I definitely don't want my kid to marry this person.
Okay.
But no, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I would know enough to make that determination.
You have me curious now. What particular characteristics for a potential spouse for your kid would make you feel like this is really the wrong person?
I think drug addiction would be a good one.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I would want my kid marrying a drug addict.
Now, if we think of drug addiction as merely an illness, is it not a little bit hypocritical to say that that's an illness that you would say rules out your kid's spouse as a potential suitor, but other illnesses, I'm guessing, would be okay?
Depends on the drug, I suppose. Because I think with certain drugs, just entering that realm in the first place is something that I think is concerning.
Okay, what about religious zealotry?
Oh, definitely out. No way. No religious zealots of any sort.
Okay, and what I mean, give me anything else that you can think of?
I don't know, a tendency to throw knives, perhaps perhaps extreme right-wing ideologies.
What about, let me
guns,
ask you this one, what about a violent criminal past?
Yes, I think that, well, I think you can, some people when they're young, they have some anger issues. I think you can work those out. So that's not necessarily a deal breaker, although I guess it would depend on the nature of those violent crimes.
So what I'm hearing you saying, though, is to summarize, drug addiction is something much more concerning to you for a potential child suitor than past violent crime.
I think for people who snap out of it, it's much easier to fall back into the addiction than to go back into those violent lapses.
All right. Very interesting. I find this all fascinating. I don't know about the audience, but I just think it's spectacular when we hear about this. If you disagree with Lewis, let us know. How would you handle, if you were to handle an arranged marriage, what would you be looking for, right? How would you do that? And of course, I think the context of all this is most of our audience, as well as Lewis, as well as me, are against arranged marriages. An Argentinian man named Jose Alberto, 58 years old, died while having sex with a scarecrow that he dressed in lipstick and a wig and strapped a sex toy onto. He was found dead in his home, lying next to the straw doll. Police spokesman Rodolfo Mure says there were no signs of violence, and we are working on the assumption that the man died during sex with the scarecrow. This is an incredibly disturbing story, particularly to me, Lewis, since this is the country I was born in and where most of my family still lives, Argentina. Argentina, not typically known for scarecrow sex.
Yeah, and it seems like he was not necessarily penetrating the scarecrow.
No.
It seems like it's the opposite. There was something attached to the scarecrow, and this man was the one being penetrated.
Yes, and neighbors did describe the man as a loner who lived by himself, had no mobile phone, autopsy results not yet officially released. This is hugely disturbing to me as an Argentinian. And I thought, to be frank, that the entire story was just a straw man argument. I didn't even want to deal with it.
Very clever. Now, are you related to this man?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah, there's no one in my family by this name.
Okay. He might have changed his name. But anyway, these types of people, they exist everywhere.
Yeah.
They're not exclusive to the United States. And I guess Argentina's got a few of them.
Yeah, it's good to know sometimes that this is not exclusive to the United States, but because when we cover mostly U.S. politics, I think it's easy to sometimes be blinded and think certain things exist only in the U.S. And with certain cases, things are almost exclusive to the U.S. Like, for example, what are the countries at our level of development that don't have single-payer healthcare? Well, it's just the U.S. That is exclusive to the U.S. But certainly sex with animals and sex with scarecrows are not activities that are exclusive to the U.S., and that's really good to know. On today's bonus show, a New York City park gets a surprise Edward Snowden statue. Inscriptions from World War I soldiers are found in medieval French tunnels. We will talk about farm skyscrapers, and the lyrics to a classic song sell for over $1 million. How much would Lewis pay for those original lyrics written by the author? We will find out. davidpakman.com/membership to sign up to get the bonus show and all other member benefits. And of course, up until the end of today, you can use coupon code APRIL50 to save 50% off of your first payment.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show membership program is funded directly by our audience through the membership program at davidpakman.com/membership. Our new membership system does not require you to have a PayPal account. It does not require you to have an Amazon Payments account. It only requires that you go to davidpakman.com/membership and sign up directly. And to get people over on our new membership system through the end of today, actually, we are offering a 50% discount on your first payment, be it a monthly or yearly membership. You can use coupon code APRIL50, all one word, APRIL50, to save 50%. And today's new member of the day is Lauren McCants. Lauren, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. Really, we depend on members like Lauren. There's no other way to say it. You can also support our show if you ever shop on Amazon.com by using the Amazon banner on the right side of davidpakman.com before you shop. 5 years ago this week, Michele Bachmann referred to the census being used to put Japanese into internment camps during World War II as a reason for why people should not fill out the 2010 census. 2010 was the first time that we had the census since the show's inception, and so it was the first time we were hit with what I did not expect, a bunch of right-wing anti-census sentiment and rhetoric. I guess we're going to expect that, Lewis, now every time there's a census.
Perhaps, yes. But back then, even in 2010, some Republicans realized maybe this isn't the best idea, seeing as how, seat maps are all related to census data. And
congressional maps, right.
And of course, funding, right? I mean, they could, some of these red states could receive less funding as a result of this.
The thing is, it's not difficult to understand how, in spite of whatever kind of conspiratorial negative idea you can concoct around the census, the data is very useful to government when it comes to the allocation of services, when it comes to the allocation of resources, when it comes to disaster preparedness. There's just so many obvious reasons why the census is a crucial tool for government.
Yeah, but so many right-wingers consider it an invasion of privacy and government overreach. And, I don't know, it just makes sense to me how this data is useful and important. But maybe there's something I'm missing.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if the next time this happens, the crazy conspiracies around the census are even more extreme, because think about how much the anti-government, for privacy, libertarian-esque movement has grown in the last 5 years, particularly with the likes of Ron Paul and Rand Paul, this could escalate significantly for the next census.
It could. And imagine if we have, I think if we have a Democratic president, we will certainly hear some outrageous stuff. If it's a Republican president, maybe it won't be as bad.
3 years ago this week, a Greek news presenter was pelted with eggs and yogurt live on TV after having a right-wing nut on the show. 17 activists snuck into the studio and let the dairy fly, so to speak. They were upset with the show for having on a member of the Golden Dawn Party, which is this openly anti-immigration neo-Nazi party. It isn't very interesting why the host had things thrown at them, but what's interesting is what was thrown at them, to throw yogurt and eggs. And it's funny because now we have this Greek yogurt trend, and yogurt was thrown. It's pretty compelling to me.
Yeah, it made me wonder what do people throw at other people in any given country? And right. I know in much of the Arab world, there is this shoe throwing thing.
Because it's considered an insult.
Yeah, because shoes are dirty. And yeah, George W. Bush once dodged a shoe that was thrown at him. And in Sweden, there was the politician who had the cake thrown in his face, and he was very upset. But so, yeah, what do they throw in different countries?
In the U.S., it's mostly bullets, and they're not thrown. They're propelled out of a firearm.
That is true. Yeah, I would take a cake in the face any day over, 22.
Remember when Bill Gates was pied?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I think he handled it well, though.
If you are in a country that has it as custom to throw something else that is unusual or unique, let us know. I would be very curious. 2 years ago this week, President Obama selected Goldman Sachs executive Bruce Heyman for ambassador to Canada. President Obama has appointed 23 campaign bundlers to be ambassadors. So a bundler is, individually, there's obviously a donation limit, which has since been increased for how much an individual can donate to a campaign. But there's these bundlers who know a lot of people with money who start making calls, and they bundle typically maximum donations for a candidate. And 23 of these campaign bundlers were selected to be ambassadors by President Obama. This is one of those areas, Lewis, where big differences between Democrats and Republicans, but the corporatist, cronyist status quo around campaign finance and these friendly appointments is very common amongst both parties.
It is. And I guess it's not enough just to say thank you. And I'm assuming these bundlers are expecting something in return, at least in a lot of these cases. But, is this a job where all you need is a good head on your shoulders? I mean, how important is it that we are hiring people as ambassadors who have intimate knowledge about these countries?
Seemingly not that important. Obviously, I would love to say all ambassadors have a personal connection to the country or territory where they serve, and they are the best people to do that. But in all reality, that's not the case. And if you have a good head on your shoulders, you can go to diplomat school, diplomat training. And I've seen some documentaries about diplomatic training, and it is fascinating. I don't remember the names of any off the top of my head. It's been a little while since I saw them, but it is fascinating. And really, most reasonably intelligent people with a good head on their shoulders can be trained to be good diplomats.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. And, if you are someone who knows a lot of rich people and you don't care who wins the presidency, be a bundler for whichever one you think will win. And that might be a good investment for you.
Yeah, but personal investment, no question about it. Remember that you can use the coupon code APRIL1/2 until the end of today to save 50% off of your first membership payment at davidpakman.com/membership. Obviously, a better deal, the longer term membership that you lock in. I say lock in a year at half price. Why not? That coupon code is APRIL1/2, and you no longer need to use PayPal nor Amazon payments to become a member. You can do it right on our website. We will take a break. Interview is next. We'll answer your audience questions, and we have a fantastic bonus show, which of course is available to our subscribers.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
This week's classic interview deals with population and overpopulation, and it's when we spoke to the chief of the Population and Development Branch of the UN Population Fund. We've been talking a lot about resource usage, depleting the Earth's resources in the context of climate change and so many other things. And this is a really good interview from over 2 years ago, specifically focusing in on the population issue. So let's go back to January 28th of 2013 with this week's classic interview. Joining me today is Jose Miguel Guzman, Chief of the Population and Development Branch of the United Nations Population Fund. The term overpopulation, first of all, what do we even mean when we talk about overpopulation? Is it a resources question? Is it just a raw number of people on Earth question?
Well, usually when we talk about overpopulation, we imagine a situation in which population is growing very fast. And then there is the risk that there is an imbalance between the number of people and the resources available. We use a lot this term like 3 or 4 decades ago when we have very high fertility and population were growing very fast. Now I think the situation has changed. We don't talk necessarily now about overpopulation.
So what are the discussions now? In other words, I see a conversation that some are trying to have when it comes to world population, which strikes me as similar to the climate change debate, where there seems to be 99% of scientists believe that human activities on Earth are having an effect on climate, and a small percentage of scientists believe that's not the case. I read most experts seem to think that we do have a population resources problem that's coming, but some individuals will say things like, hey, you could fit the entire world population in the state of Rhode Island, so there's really no population problem. What's the truth of the question?
Well, I think the truth of the question is that we cannot consider people just in terms of one number. And we cannot consider people as they are today. What we know, what we have today is an important part of the population in the world that is completely out of the market. There is not a possibility for them to be really consumers in the sense that we consider this concept. So obviously, if we think in terms of the situation today, yes, you can feed the population today, but we need to think 2 things. First is that the population will continue to increase. Even if the population is not increasing very fast as in the past, it's still increasing. And some billion will be added from now to the middle of the century, about 2 billions. So we need to also to consider this number, but most important than this number is what happened with those people. We are expecting that the population of the world will be able to leave poverty, that people will be able to have access to services, to products. So it's clear that if we think in terms of a more or less unequal world, we need to consider those people will be consumers. So they will produce CO2. They will produce emissions that will affect climate change. So what is the solution of that? And I think the solution is linked to what we call sustainable development and sustainable policies, or more specifically, green economy, in which we need to decrease the amount of emissions that are produced for each unit of the production. So I think that this is the point. If we think that it's just a matter of numbers, it's not true, but matters obviously counts too. But more importantly, what those people will do once they have the possibility to have a better quality of life.
Right. What you're alluding to is, I guess, the focus on just the number of people that are on the planet. You know, we talked about food recently, and there was some kind of report in the U.S. I don't remember if it's 25% or 35% of food is just thrown out. In other words, it goes bad either before people even purchase it at supermarkets or once people purchase it, a huge amount of food. And that really, we have so much hunger in this world, but we don't have a lack of food. It's just a distribution problem. And that seems to be connected to the inequality you're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. But also, I think recent years, last year, we even the Food and Agriculture Organization they have mentioned that they could be an issue also of production, not just about distribution. Because if we think that, yes, we can increase production, and there is the technology to do that, productivity is increasing in some places. But at the same time, we know that we cannot just consider production without considering the effect of that production in the environment. There is another issue. When we talk about population, we used to talk about population at the global level, and that's true. This is important. But more important in some cases is the population in some countries and in some areas of some countries. And in some countries, they will be facing difficulties. They will have high population growth. They will have less capacity in terms of increased agricultural production. They have more poverty, also less capacity of the people in terms of being involved in more productive activities. So there are countries in which this situation will be exacerbated by high population growth.
Which countries right now are at the top of your list for being at risk for that?
I think many sub-Saharan countries, particularly countries in the Sahel area, that has to face historically a lot of difficulties. And in those countries, I think there will be difficulties. But I think in every country in which you have a population that is growing, more than 2.5 or 3%, is a situation which present difficulties and challenges for the countries, because those countries have to invest a lot in terms of education, in terms of health, infrastructure, institution. And you cannot do that just in a short period of time. You need more time to do those investments.
Right. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and this really is specific to population, and you talked about it a little bit within specific countries. A couple of people emailed me this question for you, which is basically that I'm kind of paraphrasing the question, which is, even though the ethnic cleansings of the 20th century are over with, are there still acts of repression by world governments to control population, either eugenics or things along these lines? Are these things taking place in some countries?
I think when we talk about population dynamics, population change, many people think about population control.
Right.
And there must be there are actually many people that think that this is a solution. This is not what we think. This is not what governments has agreed in 1994 when they agreed in the Conference of Population Development in Cairo, in which they agreed that the best policies and the right policies are those policies that enhance and create new opportunities for couples, for people, for women to take this free decision about the number of children they have. And this is valid for countries with very high fertility, but also for countries with low fertility. So the issue of population control is there, and many people think that is a solution. But I don't think we can say that there is some kind of possibility to do some population controls. Some countries experience some kind of policy in that area, but basically this is not something that is, first, it's not so easy. It's not something that you can do easily to control population. And second, it's against all the human rights principle that has been agreed in the main conference of the United Nations, and in countries have signed, all countries have signed those agreements.
And then the other thing I want to touch on is, I'm not a vegetarian myself, but we have a lot of vegetarians in the audience, and a popular question for you was, give your opinion of, could the human race not eating meat be a factor in the future of population and resource dynamics on this planet?
I think everything that increases the production of CO2 will have an effect. It's clear. And we know that obviously the production of meat, as it has been done currently, has an incredible impact in terms of increasing the production. But this is not just the only factor. In some cases, it's not the most important, but it's one of the factors. And I think some of the factors are related to everything we do in our daily life, to the way we dress, to the way we eat, to the way we drive. We move from one place to the other, and to the way we deal with every activity. One travel from New York to France, it could be one round trip could be the same amount of that, one person produced in a very low, in a least developed country per year. So I think maybe you can reduce because if you don't eat, but if you travel for any reason, more than 10 miles, 10,000 miles, that means that you have also an impact. And so maybe this impact would be even higher. So I think it's about many things.
So the meat issue is an issue, but it's not fair to single it out above so many other things that are also producing emissions and so on.
What I think is that in this process, what we need to consider is that there is not one single solution, but any single solution helps.
We've been speaking with Jose Miguel Guzman, Chief of the Population and Development Branch of the UN Population Fund. Thank you so much.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Time for audience questions. First question is from Craig. Hey, David, have you noticed the trend of people canceling plans via text message? Has texting made canceling plans easier, or am I just a loser? This is a really good question. I actually just read an article on Mike.com called There's a Modern Problem Affecting Our Friendships and It's Time to Talk About It. And particularly in big cities, like in New York, for example, this has become a really common thing. There are certain people who I just know are going to cancel plans. When I make group plans, I assume that certain people are going to bail at the last minute. And there's actually a few people that regularly try to make plans with me to get drinks. And I make the plans, and I know invariably I will get a text message hours before saying something came up and they're canceling. And in fact, this recently happened for the third time with the same person. So when I look at my schedule, I don't think about it as busy time, but I wouldn't book something else at that time. I just say, I'm probably going to be free at that time. So yes, this is absolutely an issue. One of your friends in Austin, Lewis, that I'm friends with on Facebook, posted the exact same article saying she's been encountering this, but that she also does it herself to other people. So I think, yes, there is something about texting that does seem to make people feel less bad about just, hey, send a text, silence your phone. I don't want to think about the fact that I just bailed on someone.
Yeah, because you're just sending them the message and there's not this back and forth. They can't ask you why. They can't try to pressure you.
Right.
You're not hearing them. They're not hearing you. You're somehow detached from it when it's a text. But is it a problem? I mean, is this affecting our relationships and our friendships in an adverse way?
I think it arguably is. If you regularly have friends who are canceling in this way, when you get a text message cancellation very much last minute, when it starts to happen regularly, I would start to imagine that that person doesn't really care about the fact that I've set aside time to spend with them. So I get emergencies happen, but if emergencies happen every time to the same person, you start to wonder a little bit. So yeah, I think that this can have an impact on friendships. Fortunately, I don't know too many people who regularly do this. I also think that group things allow people, a lot of times a big thing has been, hey, you want to do this? Maybe who's going, right? And sometimes I feel like people are more willing to bail when they know other people are going so that their bailing would not single-handedly end the plans.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed as well. I don't know. I don't run into this type of thing very often. Maybe I just don't make as many plans as you, and so there are less things to be canceled or bailed on.
Do you find yourself canceling plans?
Occasionally. Yeah, I think everyone does. I mean, occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, I just really feel like I do it so infrequently. If I'm really sick and I just can't go, or if something really, if, for example, when I got a flat tire a few weeks ago, I had no choice but to move around my plans, right? I was waiting for a tow truck. What I could do was truly limited. But if it's going to make it so that, oh, you know what, I've got to go grocery shopping and then I've got to rush over and meet someone, yeah, it would be probably easier if I didn't have those plans, but I'm not going to cancel because of that, because I respect that someone else has arranged to see me.
And texting has pretty much become, through Facebook and just normal texting has basically become my primary source of communication with my friends overall. So, I think canceling, you just cancel the same way you made the plans. It was all via text.
Saman wrote to me, and he was responding. Actually, you know what? I don't know if Saman is a man or woman. Saman was responding to our discussion from a previous question, which was about whether you would rather be able to fly or be able to teleport. And we talked about that. And Saman said, I think I have a much more interesting choice. What about mind control or time travel? Both could be used in great feats of change, but even if performing seemingly good actions, it would still be morally questionable. With mind control, you could use the minds of the elite and powerful or the public. You could reverse the influences of the mainstream media, remake the world in your image. But would that absolute power corrupt absolutely? How far would be too far? With time travel, you could prevent disasters, save lives, change history. But what about unintended consequences? Kill Hitler? Go to the far future or witness the destruction of the world? Go to early history, become a tourist in time, or shape it? And this really gets us into the Novikov self-consistency principle of time travel, which is a really interesting thing. I'll first open it up to you, Lewis. Time travel or mind control?
For me, I think I would, and not because I would pick time travel, not factoring in like, how can I change the world? How can I alter things? For me, I would just have to pick time travel because I would love to go back and see, okay, I want to see ancient Rome. I want to see how the pyramids were built. I want to see, that's what would be appealing to me about time travel.
So it wouldn't be about going back and making changes.
Right.
Although, wouldn't it be very tempting, Lewis, to use this to your advantage? You say, listen, I'm not going to go and mess with history, but I'm going to use this to win the lottery, for example. And I'll just do that. I'll have the money I need, and then that's it.
It would be very tempting. I think that if it were, let's say it were just about control and controlling things and changing things, which one would I pick then? I think I would pick mind control, because that way I can change things from here forward. Whereas if you go back in time and you change something, it could have consequences that you could not possibly have foreseen, right? I mean, things could go in a completely different direction.
Of course.
Even though you thought you were going to be doing something good and helpful, it could have the opposite effect. Whereas with mind control, I think you would have a bit more control, if you will.
At the same time, though, what you're referring to are these sort of paradoxes in time travel, right? If you go back and kill your grandmother, then you would never have been born. So how were you able to be born and then have gone back and killed your grandmother? And there's the Novikov self-consistency principle, which was developed by Russian physicist Igor Novikov, who says that essentially that this would not happen. It's a very technical thing, which, to be quite honest, I don't understand. But the Novikov self-consistency principle says that if you go back and change the past, that it would not create these paradoxes in time and potentially explode the universe or implode it on itself, whatever. So we don't really know. I mean, time travel really only exists theoretically right now. So I don't know that we can say for sure, but I understand the concern, I guess. If your goal was to extend your own life, for example, then you would think time travel would be the way to go, because by going forward, you have a shot at getting to where there's indefinite life extension. If your goal is to enrich your life now via using one of these two methods, you could really use either in ways that would be used for personal gain.
Right. Traveling forward, of course, I think would also be fascinating, traveling forward in time. So time travel would be more interesting.
Which one could do the most good? If your thought was just, I want to pick the one that will do the most good right now.
Mind control, without a doubt.
Mind control. Yeah, because if you go back in time and do the things that you think will improve stuff, even aside from the time travel paradoxes, there's no guarantee, right, of exactly what would happen if you were to go back into the past. You could go into the future and bring back cures for certain conditions. That could certainly have a significant impact. But I think I agree with you that at least in a forward-looking way, mind control would probably be a better tool for doing good with. If you disagree, let us know. What are your thoughts on this? Got a question from Alex about the death penalty. I wanted to pose a question about the death penalty. On a recent show, Lewis said he thinks life in prison is a harsher punishment than death. This got me thinking, if one opposes capital punishment on the grounds that it is cruel and unusual punishment, would it make life in prison a cruel and unusual punishment as well if you think that it is worse? And thus, shouldn't you be opposed to that? If life in prison is worse than death, and death is cruel and unusual punishment, surely life in prison would also be cruel and unusual, right?
That is a good question. I don't consider life in prison to be cruel and unusual because it just isn't. First of all, you're not killing someone. It's not. There's nothing, necessarily inherently grotesque or brutal about it.
Right, but assuming you're not being tortured, assuming you're not in physical pain, you are still presumably in significant psychological distress from being in a box for the rest of your life. But would that be cruel and unusual in the same way that the act of killing is? You could argue, I think, which is what maybe you're doing, Lewis, that it is worse to live through 40 years in prison than to have the lights shut off by a state-sanctioned execution from the point of view of the experience of it. But it is not cruel and unusual in the sense that we think about when we talk about actions taken by the state.
Exactly. And right, I mean, what is worth a couple, weeks or months, or so I guess sometimes people are on death row for years of waiting for that, the anticipation, and then a couple minutes of pain, perhaps, or a lifetime of being in prison, living with the consequences of your actions, and not being exposed to the outside world. I mean, I think one is cruel and unusual, but of course, if we kill people, we can't prove their innocence if there are things that went wrong with the trial, or they are, if they are innocent, what do you do if you kill them? So
yeah, there's no turning back with that, no question about it. And Alex had a follow-up also, which is, if life in prison is worse than death for some, should inmates be allowed to ask to have their lives ended rather than suffering? Prisoners have rights, and I would assume that life in prison is synonymous to torture for them. Should they not be allowed to ask for a way out if they want it?
I would say no. I would say the normal rules would apply in this situation. I think if they ask to be killed, to be put to death, then it's no different from, a death sentence. I think if they are perhaps terminally ill, and want to be put to death rather than actually physically suffering and in horrible pain and agony or what have you, then maybe in those circumstances we could allow that, just like we would, or just like I want regular people to be able to do outside of prison. Right.
You're talking about doctor-assisted suicide or euthanasia, which goes beyond the bounds of just inmates, right? I tend to agree with you. That if someone has been sentenced to life in prison, particularly when we know that we have people that are both mentally ill and innocent in prison, I would like to think, particularly, you could think of an innocent person who says, wow, I am so miserable and I'm never getting out of life in prison. I just would rather them put me to death. The last thing we need, right, are states getting involved in putting to death people that are innocent, simply because they can't bear to spend their lives in prison as innocent individuals.
Yeah, if they've just given up. I guess it depends on what exactly you think the punishment is, or what the point of incarceration would be. Is it to keep them out of society? Is it a punishment? What is it?
Yeah, presumably life in prison is to keep them out of society, right? There's no point, there's no sense of rehabilitation when you're saying you're here without the chance of getting out, period. Yeah. It's tough to make a blanket ruling on all of these things, but really interesting questions from Alex. Send me your thoughts on this. That is it for today. What a bonus show we have coming up. davidpakman.com/membership to sign up. The bonus show, just one of the many great member benefits available.
David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.